You're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker, a podcast about Nigerian filmmakers, their films, and how we can build a diverse and functional industry. I'm your host, Selegot. On this episode, my guest is Victoria Popoola. She is the CEO of TalentX Africa, a film financing marketplace. Victoria applies her experience in finance and venture capital to connect creatives to investors. We talk about the services TalentX offers, their plans for the film industry, and what Victoria likes to watch. If you're a new listener, you're welcome and I hope you enjoy. All right. Hi, Victoria. You're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay. So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Victoria Popoola. I'm co-founder and CEO at TalentX Africa. I have a background in finance and venture capital, structuring financing products for the venture debt industry.
Yeah.
Also have a little experience with data analytics,
Right.
right? So, applying financing, structuring experience to the creative industry and helping, creatives to access low cost, non-predatory funding for their projects is what we basically do at TalentX Africa.
Okay.
So we connect investors, currently institutional investors, but we're looking into opportunities for retail and syndicate investors as well. So we connect investors to African creatives, right? Starting with film, but eventually across um, music, art, and games. And the idea is that, so far the film funding marketplace has been a bit informal, right?
Yeah.
We ran a survey sometime last year, and most creatives, right? And we're not talking, the Kunle Afolayos and, the ones who have, a bit of brand equity,
Yeah.
but the other, say, 90% of filmmakers, mostly self-fund for their projects, right? Or they, crowdsource from family and friends,
Yeah.
right? The ones that do access institutional funding, are typically high cost or, they need to put down some form of, collateral,
Yeah.
right? And even a couple of the creative funds that are available to, creatives, say the one by CBN. I mean, from what I hear from creatives, it's not, all that accessible, right? So, I mean, what we're trying to do is to make film funding, a viable asset class for
Yeah.
investors. And package it in such a way that, it's not an emotional investment. It's not something that people do just because they want to support creatives, right? It's something they do because, it's financially viable, right? And it's something that, they're able to invest, get their money back from and then
Yeah.
reinvest in, right? I think that's the ultimate way to, create a circular, kind of model,
Yeah.
right? So that's a bit about me and maybe about what we're building at TalentX.
Okay. So, as a finance and venture capital expert, you decided to, choose the creative industries. Why was that your choice? Why did you go with that?
Well, I probably never told this story, but it's an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't something I necessarily chose at first, right? So working as an investment analyst at a VC firm, TalentX was actually one of our portfolio companies, right?
Yeah.
It was being incubated by the VC firm.
Okay.
So we had someone who was running it, like a general manager,
Yeah.
right? She ran it for a while, about 2 years, right? And then she needed to leave, right? So I was part of the team that was kind of recruiting for the next um, Talent X manager, right? Or in this case, a CEO, because we wanted to properly structure it as a startup that it was, right? So we were looking for, a team that would co-found or that would, kind of lead the mission, right?
Yeah.
So I was part of that team that was looking for, replacement, and we were looking for someone, with a bit of the creative background, but also a bit of the finance background.
Yeah.
I mean, the existing team already had, some creative experience, so we needed it to be a bit heavier on the finance side, right? It proved a bit difficult because we couldn't quite find, someone who was the perfect fit, right?
Yeah.
Not myself a creative, even though I've definitely never shot a film before or, necessarily done anything in public that, anyone would, classify as, okay, hey, she's a creative, right?
Yeah.
Because, mostly because my parents, they just never let me explore that. But I mean, it's something I'm still going to do eventually. I told my board members that, after TalentX, I'm going to, retire and, start a band.
Okay.
A music band with like, a bunch of other, 30 plus women. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, we couldn't quite find, someone who was a good fit for the role, right? And the conversation, evolved up to a point where I kind of volunteered or put myself up for the role, right? I mean, I didn't really think it was something that, I was going to get, or like the board was going to say, oh hey, let's give that a shot, right? But it kind of happened, and I'm like, well, okay, right. It looks like I'm going to be building, this with the team for another, I don't know, 5, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So it originally wasn't something that I founded from scratch, but it's become something that, has aligned with my, vision as well, right? It's become something that we've kind of shaped, right, into what it currently is, in terms of the business model, in terms of the team, in terms of, what our goals are, right? So that's kind of how that started. So right now we have a team of creatives, we have, a team of finance people, and then we have a team of tech people, because of course, we're trying to do things a bit differently with financing infrastructure and make it, tech enabled, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the only way to really speed up the process and standardize some parts that are able to be standardized, right? So we have a co-founder, Fon Bassi, who is a screenwriter. He was on the Johnsons, he was on, I think it was the Flatmates.
Yeah.
And a couple of other projects like that. We also have, someone who's recently joined our team, Tosin Oludare. She was the producer. She actually worked with us on one of our films, right? Interstate. That was our second film.
Okay.
She was a producer on the project, and the working relationship was great. She had, some really fantastic distribution experience, from existing projects, and we were like, okay, let's give that a shot. Let's see how we're able to work together to build, solid distribution networks for, the films that we fund, and also, third-party films, so that we're able to close the system. So we create supply by funding films, and we also create demand by helping those films get monetized.
Okay.
So that's what the team looks like right now.
Okay. So yeah, you said you use data analytics. So what does the data say about Nollywood?
Yeah, well, so based on that survey that we did last year, I'd say about 60%, if not more, of creatives actually use their own funding for their projects, right? And this has a couple of implications. The first is what we generally see with short films, right? People haven't really put a lot of attention on monetizing short films, right? Because they're seen as, a means to an end and not the end itself, right? So you see creatives, using their own funding or raising from family and friends to make a short film, in the hope that it it serves as a stepping stone, or that they're able to, get interest from people who would see those short films and be like, oh, I like this short film, I want to use them for my feature film, right? Or that an investor would see a short film and be like, I believe this person can make, something with a feature film that would be really great, right? So because of that, there's not a lot of ways that creatives monetize short films, right? But we think that there's a very huge opportunity there, right? I mean, we had a film festival late last year, with the Afrochella guys. I don't know if you heard about that, the Afro Talent Film Festival held in Accra, right? And we had, a bunch of like really, really awesome submissions from all over Africa, right? And there was this short film that we saw, right? It was my co-founder that first saw the film. He saw the film and he came to me and he was like, Victoria, I just saw this really amazing short film. It was probably like 10 minutes long, but it was awesome. I definitely would have paid to watch that, right? Lo and behold, a month or two after that festival, the film actually got on Netflix, right? It's one of the few short films, African short films, if not the only one on Netflix, right? Well, it's Morning After. Yeah, so I mean that's one thing that we've seen, and we think that if we're able to put a bit more attention into monetizing that form of art, then a lot of creators will be better off for it. But apart from that, I think that in terms of the industry and in terms of recouping investments, right, at least from what we've seen, I'll probably put industry success rates at about 30 to 40%, right? Where success rates here mean that they're able to recover enough funding to cover the budget, right? And also a little premium. So say you raise funding from a bank or you raise from some other investor, right? And also, I don't know, 20% per year on that, to repay your investors. The thing though is with these budgets, right?
Yeah.
Films that we make here are usually on like very, very tight budgets, and tight in the sense that it involves a lot of, I beg, and it involves a lot of, you're my guy, help me run this stuff, right? And a bunch of people just offering their services for free because they really just want to express their art, and they just want to get something out there, right? So I mean, I wouldn't say that using the budget as as a baseline would entirely be fair, but for the purpose of just figuring out what a success rate looks like, right? From people that we've talked to, it's actually possible to hit success rates of about 80 to 90%, right? Which is incredible. When you talk to investors who are a bit risk averse, or don't want to take that much risk but are interested in funding films, right? When you tell them that it's possible to hit these kinds of success rates, right, compared to what you see in the industry generally, right? Then there's a lot more interest in funding films. And who are the people that usually hit these kinds of success rates apart from the the made producers or the people who have already pretty much found their footing in the industry, right? It's usually those who have who have like a distribution arm inbuilt, right, or have distribution channels inbuilt, right? So say we fund films, right, but on the other side of that, we also owned a chain of cinemas. We also owned an SVOD platform, or say we didn't own them, right? But we had links to them in the sense that we fund you as a creative. Obviously, you have your own distribution plan, right? You try to distribute your film your own way, but say that doesn't go according to plan, right? And we are able to step in, right, as a backup plan and say, okay, let's try to get this into our cinema chain or into, SVOD platforms that we have relationships with, right? Just creating that end-to-end system that starts with project selection, and then project management, and then ends with monetization, right? We're able to say that, okay, there's a possibility that we're able to raise those success rates from 30 to 40 to about 80 to 90, right?
Yeah.
And if you fund films as a slate, right, a group of, I don't know, 4 or 5 projects, as opposed to, funding one project at a time, right?
Yeah.
And, say you fund 5 films, at an 80% success rate, it means that the 4 films that are going to be successful would be enough to cover the losses of the 5th film, right? And also give you some reasonable return, right? Which is also borrowed from the VC space, right? In my case, where you invest in a portfolio of companies, say a success rate of 10 to 20%, but those ones that are successful will return maybe 10 times or even 20 times, sometimes as high as 100, 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
So if those successful ones return that much, right, then it's more than enough to cover for the ones that aren't successful. In this case, the possible return on investment isn't as high. Maybe you have 2x or you have 3x or sometimes 5x, 10x, right? And you have a success rate of 80, 90%, it's a lot less risky, right, than VC, right? It's just not as high in terms of like possible return on investment.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to, put your money in an asset that is, that moves differently from the rest of the market, right?
Yeah.
So crypto is going down, sorry, so the crypto guys, the stock market is red, and real estate isn't really doing great. But you see film, people will always watch films.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter if there's COVID, doesn't matter if there's a recession. I mean, maybe people wouldn't go to the cinemas to watch film, but they'll still watch film somehow. Right? They'll still spend money on entertainment. Right? So if you're looking to invest in an asset that is not correlated with the rest of the market, then film is a good investment, right? If you're not that into risk, right, and if you're not looking for 100 times your investment, then film is also a good, place to invest in, right? What we just need to do is build out the funding arm and also build out the distribution arm so that we can create that end-to-end system that properly de-risks, investors. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that we've seen in terms of how creatives fund, and also what the return potential looks like in the market generally versus what it could look like, when we're also plugged into distribution partners.
Can you walk us through like the different services offered by TalentX Africa?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just start with the basic idea of what we do, right? So the first thing I'll say is our funding is 100% backed by intellectual property, right?
Yeah.
We don't require hard collateral. We don't have any insane access requirements. I mean, if you have a bit of track record, you have a solid team, and you have a good story, you have good financial potential, right? Basically, if your film is viable, right?
Yeah.
All we need to do is a couple background checks to make sure that everything checks out, and then you can get the funding, right?
Yeah.
So how it works is usually we do a call for submissions every year, right?
Okay.
And that call we sometimes get as many as about 200 submissions, okay? And then we filter down to about 3 to 5 projects, that we then evaluate. We offer the funding terms. It's usually a hybrid.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of debt and equity because we're partnered with debt financiers. So those partners offer debt financing, right?
Mm.
But we also, we also have the project management side of things, where we're hands-on, we're set to make sure that we're able to catch things as they arise,
Yeah.
right? Because again, the project is backed by intellectual property, right?
Mm.
Which is the film that you're about to make. So what happens if something goes wrong and the film doesn't get made, right? It means the money is gone,
Yeah.
the collateral is gone because it wasn't even created in the first place, right? So the first risk that we need to minimize, right, is the risk of non-completion, right?
Mm.
And to that, it involves, um, just I mean, not eating into the creative's control,
Yeah.
right? But just being in the background to make sure that things are transparent, you know, contracts are signed, actors get their contracts, they're paid, when we say they'll be paid and they're paid the amount that is agreed in their contract.
Yeah.
So there's never a case of, I worked with someone, they promised to pay me 50,000. You know, we worked till 12 a.m. and they ended up paying me just 10,000, right?
Mm.
Or got cheated, or just we try to eliminate all those problems as much as possible, right? So that all stakeholders can see what is going on when it is going on, right?
Yeah.
And also make sure that if there's anything challenging coming, we can tackle it as it comes up, right? And then once the project is created, we also take custody of the intellectual property until the financing is repaid, right?
Yeah.
So the creative is trying to distribute their film. We also have a distribution plan in case that doesn't work out, right? Because again, the creative is not the one liable for the loan, right?
Yeah.
It is the project that is taking on the financing, right? And it is on the project to return the financing. And
Yeah.
obviously on us as well, right? Because we are the other side of the collateral, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we select, we facilitate funding, we manage the project to minimize risk of non-completion, and then we also manage the collateral to avoid default risk, right, or the risk that the film is not able to get monetized, right? So that's kind of like how we work.
Yeah.
But then outside of that, we also offer each of those aspects of the value chain as standalone services, right?
Okay.
So we could be helping to select films, right, from a submission list, right? It could be for a film festival, it could be, for an investor who's looking to invest in films, right? And then there's the other side of that, which is project management, right? So say you have a film that you've invested in or that you're about to invest in, but you need someone, on ground to just make sure that things are, as transparent as possible, and there are no like major challenges that aren't caught early on.
Yeah.
Then we also offer collateral management services, right? Which in this case would just be distribution services, right? So you have a project, the creative is great at producing, but they don't really have distribution networks or partnerships to get the film monetized, right?
Mm.
And in terms of monetization, it's one thing to put it on Netflix Nigeria and call it a day, right?
Yeah.
It's another thing to explore different territories where your film could get monetized, and basically optimizing for every territory possible,
Mm.
right? Those are two different things, right? You could make 2x on your film if you're looking at just Netflix Nigeria and maybe a couple cinemas and things like that, right? Or you could 10x or even more, right, if you also look into other territories, right? So, I mean, we partner with people to, take custody of the IP
Okay.
and liquidate it in the event of a default. And it may sound a bit foreign, but it's actually something that happens like regularly, right, when it comes to traditional financial systems.
Yeah.
You go to a bank, where you put down your car as collateral, right?
Mm.
The only reason why that bank is taking your car as collateral is that if you're not able to pay, they're able to put your car on like an auction, right?
Yeah.
And sell it off, cover their money, right?
Mm.
Which is why the car has to be close to the amount that you want to take out in loan, right? In
Yeah.
terms of the value of the car, right? So this is basically the same thing, but instead of the car as collateral, it's the film or the IP as
Mm.
collateral, okay? Now, obviously, it doesn't make sense to take IP as collateral if you don't have the infrastructure to distribute the film if there's a default, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably why we wouldn't expect banks to go full on into film financing, except of course they want to also build out the distribution arm, right?
Yeah.
So we partner with banks, we partner with asset managers, we partner with other kinds of investors to manage collateral, right, and distribute the film if there's a default. And we also partner with third-party filmmakers, independent filmmakers who have projects, want to distribute their projects, but aren't able to, right? So we're able to connect them with different territories and different options,
Yeah.
and basically come up with a distribution plan, right, that works for them, right? So that's kind of the end-to-end thing.
So apart from your call for submissions and you guys kind of helping projects get financing, I also saw there's a marketplace on your website.
Yeah, so I mean, the goal is to build, infrastructure where creatives can just go, and connect to different types of investors, right?
Mm.
Right now, we are the marketplace, right? Because we're still trying to figure out, how exactly the workings would look like,
Mm.
right? So this is basically us starting with a manual process, understanding how the process works, and then starting to automate, parts of that process so that we get to a point where, we don't need to be there as much, right? Doing the investor matching, and then we'll just be, in the background doing the project management and the collateral management. But then we have a tech infrastructure that matches creatives to investors, right? So
Yeah.
right now, I think we are the marketplace,
Yeah.
right? So we do the investor matching right now.
Okay. And there's also a social networking side to it.
So that's in development, right?
Mm.
What what we've announced recently is a content monetization platform.
Okay.
Great. You see that if you look on our Instagram page. Um, it's still in development, but we think it's something that creators will find super useful, right? So it's basically a platform for creators to manage their content, their fans, also their earnings, right, on just in one place, right? So you can upload your film, and then you can share a link to your existing audience on social media,
Yeah.
which is how most people distribute their film currently anyway.
Yeah.
Share a link, put a price tag on it, get people to come to your website or to your profile on Grid, to watch your film, to pay for it. You can get audience insights. You can see what your audience likes. They can leave comments. You can reward them, with say discounts or like cons or like free passes to your next content. We'll be able to support pay-per-view. We'll be able to support subscriptions. What your fans are saying. They're able to connect with you on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
You also get to a point where you're able to host products alongside those films, right? But ultimately, the goal is to create, a platform where filmmakers and other creators are able to, connect with their communities,
Mm.
right? Because we believe that the future of content is community ownership,
Mm.
right? Where creators are able to leverage their communities, their communities are able to own, you know, um, their content, kind of like fractional ownership in a film, where you become an investor and the creative, has more options in terms of, monetization or in terms of, you know, liquidity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, yeah, so let's talk about you. Do you watch Nollywood films?
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, what was some of your favorite films so far?
Um, I say I really, 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 really loved King of Boys, right?
Yeah,
Especially the first one. I can't count how many times I've watched that film.
yeah,
It's just, yeah, I wouldn't say I connected with it on a personal level because, you know, I mean, it's not something I can exactly relate to like that, right? But it was amazing. It was a work of art,
yeah,
right? I also loved, films like Sylvia. I loved Blood Sisters a
yeah.
lot, right? Red Life was great. What else? What else? What else? Oloture, which was actually written by Yinka,
Yeah.
who we're working with on a project
o-
actually.
Okay.
We should be announcing that shortly. And yeah, there's a bunch of Nollywood films that I really love, but I think probably the peak Nollywood period was the Akian Papa days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a time where the quality, say the production quality or the sound quality wasn't necessarily great,
Mm.
right? But it was just so relatable, right? It was. I think it was the era that I probably connected with the most, right? Even though they didn't have, that much in terms of, budget support or in terms of, good quality, and of course the CGI was just awful, but it was an amazing era.
Yeah.
All the same.
Okay.
Um, I also do, Yoruba films. I
Mm.
mean, it's not something I would go out of my way to watch, but my sister is a huge fan, right? And I mean, of course, I can't be dragging TV remote with an 18-year-old, so I just sit and watch anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, it turns out great, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. What are some genres or types of like Nigerian content that you're, you know, eager to see from the industry?
Um. Well, frankly, right, I don't see movies in terms of genres, right?
Mm.
But I don't think we have that much in terms of range anyway,
Yeah.
right? I think it's, mostly comedy or, thriller or, suspense or something around that, right? I mean, I don't think I've seen one around, adventure yet,
Mm.
right? Most of the horror ones I've seen are like, you know, Kutuaye and like, you know, the older Nollywood films, right? I don't think I've seen. Okay, well, I've seen a couple of crime thrillers, but in terms of like sci-fi, okay, I've I actually saw a sci-fi. I think it was a short film. I think Brother Shaggy was in it, and
Mm.
a couple of other people. It was actually part of the film submission for our film festival last year.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, apart from the mainstream genres, I don't think we really go into a couple of the more I mean they seem more like things that you'll find in Hollywood, right? Nollywood is a bit more, yeah, it's a bit narrower in terms of range. But I really love comedy. I really love thrillers. Really loved the family dramas as well. I mean, that was a huge part of my childhood, growing up.
Yeah. So what is your film festival called?
So it's called the Afro Talent Film Festival.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what time of the year does it normally run?
So last year's was in December.
Okay.
It was around, I think, the last week. I remember it was after Christmas into the New Year. So it was last week of December. It held in Accra.
Okay.
And of course, Afro Talent is a combination of Afrochella and TalentX.
Mm.
So it was a really great experience.
Okay. And is it just a screening based festival, or you guys also have panels and workshops?
We did have panels. We did have panels. We had a couple of people, who were around for other events around that time. Because I mean, the film festival was our first edition, right?
Mm.
So it was all right. So it was supposed to be a light edition,
Yeah.
leading up to the main one sometime this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did have a couple of panels. We had one on women in the industry. We had one on film financing. We had one on the content exploitation and whatnot. So yeah, we had a couple great panels. We had a lot of we had a lot of features from some really awesome people. I think we shared a couple of the details sometime, I think early this year, right, on our Instagram,
Okay.
mostly, right. So yeah, I think that yeah.
Oh, okay. And for the services that TalentX provides, um, how
Mhm.
does it differ from purely commercial projects to art house projects that like to go the festival route, which tends to take time?
Yeah. So about that, right? I don't think we necessarily differentiate
Hmm.
that way, right? And I'll tell you why. Our first film, Bunny,
Yeah.
right, is, I mean, obviously supposed to be a commercial project, right? Because, I mean, you raise funding, you distribute, you return the investment, right?
Yeah.
But because of the kind of film that it is, right, it's, I don't know if you've seen, anything on it.
Yeah.
It
I
actually
have.
talks about the beggar clan in Lagos, and a couple of myths around it, and how a young lady gets out of that, right? So I mean, it's a commercial film, but because of the kind of film that it is, we aren't exactly considering cinemas, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking to do a festival run for the project, right?
Okay.
We suspect it's probably going to be the same approach for our second film, Interstate. Okay,
Okay.
so for Bani, the final cut should be out in a couple of weeks. Um, we're already looking into a couple of film festivals that we think would be a great fit for the project,
Hmm.
right? So I mean, ultimately, I think it depends on the kind of film that it is, right? For the films that we fund, right? And then for independent filmmakers, for third-party films, I think it really just depends on what the filmmaker's vision for the project is,
Hmm.
right? I mean, obviously, the cinema is not great for everyone or for every kind of project, right?
Yeah.
Some folks don't want to distribute locally. Some want to explore international channels. I mean, ultimately, it depends on the filmmaker. It depends on the kind of film. So what we try to do is just you know put together a plan around what the filmmaker wants, and try to get them um, great deals, basically.
Okay. You're experiencing, raising money for projects, and you understand finance, and getting investors' money back to them. Like, for you,
Yep.
what advice would you kind of give filmmakers or creatives? What should always be at the top of their mind, when trying to deal with investors and raising funding for their projects?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, to do, I mean, if you intend to raise money from investors, you know, you can't be considered high risk, right? Or you can't afford to be considered high risk, right?
Mm.
And how do you get considered high risk? I think the first thing is if you don't have a track record, right? And this doesn't have to be, that you've shot like 3 feature films and that you've made like tons of money, even though that would probably make investors, more comfortable, right?
Mm.
But if you're working with a platform like ours, where distribution isn't necessarily something that you have to have, experience in or something that you have to have done before, then it means that as a creative, what you need to focus on would be your skills, right?
Yeah.
Are you the best person to tell this story, right? Is this the best story that you should be telling? Is this a story that should be told, right? Is this something that, people want, right? So just, and I think I'll probably lean into, this short film thing again, right? Although we have necessarily required short films, right? For us, even video clips, right, have been enough. Just video clips that show that you understand, what it takes to make this film that you're raising money for, right? And that you have the skill set required to put together a team.
Mm.
It's also great, if creators understand, a bit about finance, a bit about what fundraising entails, right? Although we understand and we see, a lot of creators that don't really get that part, so we try to be that bridge between investors and creatives, in the sense that we speak the language of both sides, right? But I'd say one would be track record. Doesn't have to be a full short film, doesn't have to be a feature film.
Yeah.
It could be a clip, just something that shows if you're a director, something that shows that, okay, someone that made this video clip would definitely be able to make something great, right?
Yeah.
It could be about, partnering with other people in the industry. I mean, it may not be something that would have paid you much, but it's, something that you'd have to show for your skills.
Yeah.
Right? The second thing would be keeping records, right? And I think we talked about this, with our panel at this, webinar that we hosted sometime in January. Okay, it's super important to keep record of things that you've done,
Mm.
right? Or like just develop a record keeping habit, right? Because I mean, investors will want to see, they want to see documents, they want to see, proof that, everything that you're saying about your track record is correct,
Yeah.
right? Even after receiving the funding, you want to keep your invoices, you want to keep, your transaction proof, although we have, a platform that we've built in-house that, makes this part a bit easier, right?
Okay.
So I mean, we don't think it's appropriate to, because we're funding the film, to be the ones to make direct, say transfers to whoever needs to receive money, right? We don't think it's appropriate to manage the funding on behalf of the creative, right? Because I mean, we've done it before, before we had this platform, and it slowed things down a bit. It wasn't entirely comfortable or convenient, rather,
Mm.
right? And I don't think it's, great optics in terms of like what you think of the trust level between, investors and creatives in the space, right? So we came up with a platform that allows, creatives to, manage their own funding, manage their own disbursements, but also allows investors like a back end admin access, just to kind of see on a high level, what's going on with the project,
Mm.
manage and report on the platform, You can pay whoever you need to pay. You can onboard your personnel on the platform, right? And ultimately, we'll want to also be able to integrate, things like the budget, right? So you can make disbursements based on, the allocated line items, and also integrate, things like contracts, right? That can be executed automatically. So if you say you pay someone, 50% by so date, and you pay the other 50% by so date, right? You're able to automatically generate payment instructions and make, disbursement easier, and a bunch of other things, right? So having things like that, having a platform like that means that you're able to keep those records, even after that project, you want to raise your next funding, and investors can see that you're a transparent person because, I mean, you have all of those documents, you have, proof of what you've done before, right? Um, that's the second thing, keeping records. The third thing would be, learning how to pitch, right? And this is also something that I've had to learn to do myself because, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, fundraising is hard, right? It's not something that's easy to do. So learning to, put your work in the best light, learning to, put your best foot forward, basically, right? Learning to showcase your experience, the financial potential of the film, even things like, knowing how to do a good budget, sometimes has been, like what really got me interested in the project, right?
Mm.
There's some budget that you see and you're like, okay, this person doesn't really know how these things work, right? And there's budgets that you see and you're like, okay, this person, you know, understands the business of filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
And I've been more, open to listening to that person over the person that doesn't know how to do, a proper budget, right?
Mm.
And I know that there's budgeting tools that help with this, but I think, something we're also looking to do is, to help with capacity building for creatives,
Yeah.
and just help them understand, some of the things that are required, or how to do some basic things like the budget, or how to read a financing contract, or how to understand certain clauses, or what to look out for when you're working with investors. It's actually something that in development we're calling it a resource library.
Mm.
Something that creatives can read. Something that will help them understand how to better position themselves, right? Both as filmmakers expressing their craft, right? As filmmakers approaching investors for investment. Right?
Okay.
And I'd say probably the fourth thing would be in timing, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen a couple of projects that I mean, they have awesome stories, great teams, but the story is tied around some context that is just you know that has just passed.
Yeah.
Okay, like if the project had come out like 2 years ago, for example, it probably would have been the raise, right?
Mm.
But either it was too late or too early. So I'd say that timing is also something that is super important. But apart from that, just generally, I think it would be helpful, if creatives not only understood the creative side of filmmaking, but also understood, the business side, right? How to have fundraising conversations. I think it would make a lot of things um, easier, right? I mean, we have no problem, you know, I mean, what we do sometimes is pretty much, teaching creatives, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is how this works, what, this means. I mean, we don't mind doing that because, we're also a team of creatives and we're close to the problem, and we understand that, sometimes creatives just don't have, access to capacity building. Right? We understand that that's an issue in the industry, and while we're working to fix that, we don't think that it should be, a barrier or an obstacle to people who have, great stories, have great teams, and are financially viable. So we have no problem teaching creatives, but we think it will also be great, if creatives also understood the business of filmmaking. I think it would make a lot of things um, much easier.
Okay. TalentX is solving like a lot of problems, a lot of like challenges in the industry, but TalentX might not necessarily solve all the problems that Nollywood is facing. What is something else that you think the industry needs to, prioritize in making this whole industry work a little more efficiently?
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point that you make, because it's also something that we've thought about, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, when we were doing, our market research at the start of talent, we identified a couple of problems that, creators face, right?
Mm.
One would be funding, another would be distribution or monetization, another would be, access to community, right? Or just, the right kind of mentorship, and the fourth one would be, capacity building,
Yeah.
right? Or, access to learning resources, right? But if you look at the value chain, right,
Mm.
it starts with, the concept, and then to fundraising, and then to production, and then distribution, right? And within each aspect of the value chain, there's like a lot that happens,
Mm.
right? And we understand that, even though we're solving problems in funding and distribution, there's still problems in production and concept. That's why we invested in two startups that are solving problems in concept and also in production,
Okay.
right? The first one is Show. Show is a script marketplace, right? It's basically a platform where script writers can go to, write scripts, can go to sell their scripts,
Mm.
and also a place where producers can go to find, stories that they love, that they would, want to develop, and purchase those scripts there, right, based on standardized terms, basically,
Yeah.
right? So it solves the issue of, information asymmetry, when it comes to scriptwriters, especially when it comes to, scriptwriters who are new in the game,
Mm.
right? And, just in terms of, connecting to producers or getting their work to be seen, right?
Yeah.
Or, being paid, good amounts of money for their work, you know, um, instead of being undercut, basically,
Mm.
right? So there's that. They're actually running a workshop right now. It's called iDraft, where they've selected about, 20 screenwriters. They've, taken them through a series of master classes and trainings, to get them to turn an idea into a script,
Yeah.
right? And at the end of the training, they'll also connect them with producers, and funding partners, who would buy those scripts from the screenwriters, right? So it's basically teaching them, how to write a good script, right? And also setting them up with folks who are going to acquire first script,
Mm.
right? We're actually a partner on that. We're looking to, acquire about 5 scripts. I think the workshop is coming to an end, and they should be holding a closing ceremony sometime soon. So
Okay.
that's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
The second platform is called Filmmakers Mart.
Okay.
Where they started out as a locations marketplace for, filmmakers. They help you source, and, pay for locations, and also settle permits and things like that.
Yeah.
But they evolved, into a one-stop shop for all things, production.
Mm.
So from equipment hiring to, to hiring caterers or sorting logistics. And of course, they still do, locations. So it's basically where you go when you need, anything, anything around production,
Yeah.
right? They even help with, hiring cast and crew. So like there's a bunch of stuff that they do to help on the production side, right? So with these two startups, I mean, obviously we'll be looking to do, more platforms as well, to partner with more startups, or to invest in more,
Yeah.
but with these two platforms, we've kind of formed, an end-to-end system, right? Our Bancho for concept, TalentX for financing and distribution, and then Filmmaker Smart for production. So you could basically make a film from start to finish with just those three startups, right?
Yeah.
And this, is our approach to the market. Like obviously we can't solve all the problems, right? So we partner with other people who are solving problems in the space and just create a robust system that helps the industry be better.
Yeah. Okay. Great stuff. So how can people keep up with your work, your different announcements, and call for submissions?
Yeah. So we haven't been that active on Instagram, recently, but we'll be back. We're back in the game. Sometime next week. So we mostly share our news on our Instagram and Twitter handles at TalentX Africa. Right. We also have a weekly newsletter where we share, things happening in the industry. We share resources that we think creatives should access. Right. So I mean, we'll be putting out a couple of links to join the newsletter sometime next week. So I mean, we do hope that more creatives join that because it'll be super helpful in terms of information and resources and announcements and whatnot.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, we hold a Twitter space. I think you were on the last one.
Yeah.
Once every 2 weeks, where we try to connect people who have been doing awesome stuff in the industry to people who are just coming up and could use some guidance or some some of the experience of people who have gone before, right? So we do that Wednesdays once every 2 weeks. I think the next one is supposed to be next week, right?
Okay.
So there's also that.
Okay. All right, and for people that want to work with you guys at different points of the value chain, what's the best way to get to you guys?
So do you mean work with us as in work with us on the project or work with us as a team?
So kind of like the different services you offer, but I mean, since you mentioned it, if that's also a possibility, people that want to work with you guys. So so people coming to you guys with their projects and creatives that want to work with you guys. How?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, most people reach us through our email address. That is contact@TalentX Africa. We get a couple of inbound requests for film funding there. And then we also have some people who reach out who are willing to or who are looking to work with us on projects. Right? As we scale up, as we raise more film funding, we'll definitely require more hands, especially on the project evaluation and project management sides. Just having a pool of people that we can call on to to help handle project management, on-site monitoring and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it would definitely be great to connect with more creatives, especially those who are looking to work with us as a team.
Yeah.
Right. And then for our call for submissions, we usually make that public, on our social media platforms. We even run, ads on those posts whenever we're ready to call. So I think just staying connected to our online platforms, so that they can get notified when we do our next call for submissions.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Victoria, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This has been great.
Yeah. We have come to the end of this episode. Remember to rate and review the podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Selegov Film and the podcast at the Naija Film Pod to share your feedback. You can now support the podcast by visiting the website to donate. See you on the next episode. Have a good one.